Cool. So that's a bunch of really good tips around the sort of the relationship as it develops before marriage. I would love to shift gears to some of the challenges that arise after you get married. Things are more complicated in at least some regards after you get married. Because before you get married, if you find that your partner's values about money are just fundamentally incompatible with your own, while it can be painful, it's not like catastrophic to break up, call it quits, go your separate ways. It's certainly easier than after you're married, and immensely easier if you don't have kids yet. And I was just curious, in your experience, after a couple gets married, what are the most common reasons couples fight about money, and what tend to be the common triggers?
Yeah. Well, the biggest one is definitely approach to money, like where you spend your money and how much you spend of your money. There's a study by Sonia Luter Bright here at K-State, and she lists some other things like couples actually fight about charitable giving a lot. People fight about what we call perceived financial stress. Like some people just get more stressed with less debt than others. And so when your partner's like not worried and you're stressed, it feels very isolating. In my practice, which is going to be a little bit more, I guess, severe cases, what I see a lot was financial infidelity. And then
What is that?
yeah, so financial infidelity is so fascinating. It's any kind of lie to your partner about money. But if you ask someone, have you ever committed financial infidelity? Everyone says, no, I've never done that. But then if you ask people, have you ever lied by omission? Have you ever rounded down how much you spent on an item? Have you ever just not mentioned you went shopping? Then all of a sudden the rates go high. And so, of course, those aren't terrible things. But what I think it's a sign of is an inability for people to ask for what they want. Like you are shameful about your purchases. Either A, you're spending money you shouldn't be, and that's a problem. Or B, you don't feel like you can ask your partner to meet your needs. Like I want this, I need this, and you somehow feel like you can't ask for that for your partner, which I think is horrible because that sign, if that is true in other areas of your relationship, that's going to leave you getting your needs, your needs unmet from your partner, which is what you hope for them. So yeah, that was a tangent about financial infidelity, but that's really common. And I wish people would ask for what they want. And then another huge thing is blended families. So having children from previous marriage and then fighting about how much you spend on children, having different views of how much you spend on children. And I think right now, due to COVID, we have an incredible stress around how much to financially support our adult children, whether in a blended family or in a nuclear family setting. Is how do we support them financially? Do we support them? Are we enabling them? Those are kind of issues that come up a lot.
Really insightful. I was curious, do you generally support this notion of like separate, no questions asked individual accounts in marriages?
Yeah, so I don't, because my goal is I just wish everybody talked too much. And for me, having your resources pooled will net you more money, right? Like having your money together because money makes money is better on paper financially. Of course, I would never tell a client you have to combine accounts because it is so individually based. But when I see couples as separate accounts, again, what that signals to me is maybe it's just like you haven't gotten around to it, but it signals to me maybe someone doesn't feel like they can ask for what they want. And that's really at the end of the day what I want people to do. And so if you feel like you have to have a separate account because you don't trust your partner to be aligned with your financial goals, that stinks. And if you need a separate account because you don't want to tell your partner what you're spending because of shame, that stinks. And if you need a separate account because you're afraid to ask for what you need from your partner, that stinks. So I think a lot of the reasons that joint accounts exist are negative, not necessarily the joint account itself.
Got it. I was curious, actually, a twist on that, because some couples and even counselors would advise not necessarily having totally separate accounts. You still have mostly joint accounts, but you have like you each have like a small discretionary account, kind of like play money, maybe a couple $100 a month, whatever it is, just so that there's kind of the no questions asked on small discretionary purchases. Do you recommend this?
I don't recommend it because again, I just feel like you should be able to do that if you make enough and you can financially afford it. You should be able to say, I'm buying this because I want to. But again, if it works for couples, I don't like to fix what's not broken. I think if you feel like you have a ability to say that you just don't want to, then it's fine to have joint accounts. What I'd rather a couple do is have all these accounts named after different things that they want in the future. Like one person really wants to go to Europe, one person really wants to get a boat, and you guys can have separate accounts where you just throw your extra surplus money in there in the goals you want, and then you guys have like a goal competition. I think that would be better.
Got it. Super helpful. Okay, cool. So you talked a little bit about some of the common reasons and triggers that folks fight, married folks fight about money. What are some of the best practices that you've observed for how spouses can fight productively and effectively in a way that keeps the relationship healthy and even strengthens it? I think earlier you called this like a good fight. What are the characteristics of that, and how do you make sure the fight is good rather than bad?
Yeah. I love this article that some friends of mine wrote, Sarah Acevedo and Emily Perdon. It was called Conflict Resolution and Financial Planning. But they use this analogy that I would love to plagiarize from them now. Sorry for it being long-winded, but what the analogy is that two little boys come in the kitchen screaming, fighting about an orange. They both want the last orange in the house. And the dad goes, stop fighting, I'm gonna throw the orange out, right? The mom goes, oh, I'll cut it in half for you guys to both have half. And then the grandmother, who was a conflict resolution mediator, said, no, why do you guys want the orange? Tell me what your end goal is. What do you want out of the orange? And one kid had wanted the orange to make these muffins where he needed the scrape the orange peel. And the other kid wanted the juice and to squeeze it and make orange juice. And so the grandmother said, okay, here's the rind, here's the orange juice. And what's cool about this is it demonstrates different ways we can do conflict resolution. Like the dad was like a no win, right? No one wins. Let's just everybody get punished. The mom was what's called compromise, which usually we would say, oh, that's the greatest thing ever. Let's compromise and give up a little bit for our partners. But when you compromise, you're actually giving up something. And that's what I don't want for anybody. So the grandmother did it so well by saying, let's define what do you need at the end of this conflict? Let's start with that in mind. And I think that's a beautiful thing if we could say, what need do you need to be met? What is missing, or what can I help you with at the end of this conflict that we know we walked away successfully? And that would be such a shift for all of us to start that way, wouldn't it?
Yeah, negotiation. This is often referred to as focusing on interest rather than positions.
Yeah.
So it definitely makes sense and resonates. On the topic of compromise, you meant now that you mention it, while there might be creative ways, definitely I agree to reach the outcome like in the orange analogy, where one person gets the rind and the other person gets the orange itself, and basically each person got the entirety of what they wanted. When it comes to money, often there are compromises because there's just finite resources. And I was just curious, are there areas you've observed where it is especially helpful for couples and spouses to learn how to compromise when it comes to money and finances?
Yeah. I mean, I think, creating a budget together and really having both partners recognize the finite resources they have. And then again, making sure that both partners are bought into the goal you have for saving those finite resources. Maybe it's simply just not getting into credit card debt. But if one partner is like, credit card debt's fine, then they're not going to work as hard as the other partner. And so again, I think it all starts at the very simple tracking spending and budgeting so that you can, be intentionally spending and recognizing how much of the finite resource you actually have before you start.
Got it. So budgeting and tracking spend. Are there any other, I guess, areas where you have found it particularly, I guess, good return on investment, so to speak,
Yeah.
to have a compromising, mindset or orientation?
Yeah. I mean, again, making sure that you guys are both in the right place, making sure you don't do that whole actor observer bias where you're not immediately jumping to conclusions about their personality. really truly believing that your partner is your teammate and you're going in this together. And then again, I think a huge mistake couples make is that they don't define what they're working for. You know, we're working for a house, and then you name your savings account house. And then when you make sacrifices at Starbucks or you make sacrifices at Target, you can open your account and look at that house 22 savings account and be like, this is what my dream is. This is what I want. And this is more important than whatever purchase I'm going to. The problem is a lot of times couples, only one partner has that dream. And then you have to shift the dream and say, okay, what is our actual shared dream? What do we actually want together? And maybe it's short term and long term goals. And one person's working more for the long term goal, and one person's working more for the short term goal.
How do you address those scenarios where they're actually, the dream that one partner has is not the dream that the other person has, who has a different dream of their own?
Yeah, I think talking about it is explaining why that dream is important. What does it symbolize? You know, who cares about a house? Like, it doesn't really matter. But what we really care about is the sign, the symbol of reaching adulthood, the sign and symbol of ownership and success. And so if you say, I want a house, don't you want a house? It makes sense to want a house. The partner might be like, no, I don't want a house. I don't care. But if you say, I dream of feeling grown up, I dream of feeling like I've succeeded, then your partner's like, well, I want that for you too. Like, yeah, I want to make you feel like you've succeeded in life. I want to work towards that goal too. And so I think oftentimes we tend to say the same thing over and over again, just louder and louder, and taking a step back and said, you know, maybe we hit this issue 3 times so far and I haven't made a difference. How can I approach it differently? How can I explain, you know, my needs or my wants to my partner in a way that they'll be more receptive?
I'd love to run a hypothetical by you just to really flush this out. Okay. So let's say you have a married couple and one of them, exactly as you said, they want to buy a house. And when asked why, they say, well, I always envisioned myself moving into like a dream home and just living there forever. And I want to build up memories. Like I want to have memories both for like us and, you know, our kids or whatever. The other person doesn't particularly require a house. House is fine, but doesn't particularly require a house. But anyway, doesn't value or agree that necessarily buying a house in the place that they're living makes sense, because for any number of factors, it's a lot of work to maintain a house and do the yard work. It's cheaper to rent, perhaps where they're living. They can live in a more convenient location if they're renting, like maybe more in the city center, whatever the reasons are. But they think that a house, which is a big financial investment, will not, you know, sort of be in service of their own goals. What would you say to a couple like this?
Yeah. I mean, I would just encourage to keep on having conversations, because one thing that struck me about the first person who said, I always dreamt about the house, is it was, I forgot how to say it. It was something like, I just always had dreamt about it. And, you know, a lot of times we get sold on a belief or something that we think we should do. And it may not even be what you care about. Maybe you don't actually care about the house. You just want stability, and maybe renting can give you the same stability. So I think what I'm trying to say is, one, recognizing when what we really care about and really being able to explain these are the reasons why I care about. Number two, being open that both partners may be right, that maybe partially right. Maybe it's that you guys need to buy a condo, like something in between where you bought it, so it's yours and you have stability, but you get to live in the city for the other partner. So I think going back to that conflict resolution skills is being open to hearing your partner, being more prioritizing more understanding your partner than getting what you want. I think that's the key.
Mm.
Because then once you understand your partner, then you can figure out how you can adjust what you want to meet your partner's needs.
Yeah, that's good advice. Cool. Are there any practices or rituals that you have observed that couples or spouses do intentionally to keep their relationships healthy when it comes to money matters?
Yeah. So I can tell you, I did a study with my friend Ken White, and we found out that 90% of people in our sample had not talked to anyone about money in a year. Can you imagine going a whole year without talking about money, whether it be like oh, these are my financial goals, or this is how I'm saving money, or I don't know. How do you not talk to your partner, your kids, or your parents about money an entire year? It blows my mind. And of course, there's some methodological reasons, like the sample was skewed, and that's why the number was so high. But the point of the matter is that we need to talk about money. And again, thinking about that Gottman ratio of 1 to 5, we need to get those positive financial conversations going. So I love the analogy of the house CEO meeting where you guys as a team come together once a month, put on your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar, like pre-schedule it for like once a month on a Friday, get the music on you like, get the favorite food, and just talk about how we do on our financial goals. What do we want to do better in? Are we saving for our future the way we want to be? So I think having something set up on the calendar to automatically do every month would be the most beautiful gift for your partner.
You're talking about like a planned conversation around money monthly. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
I would love for it to be about your spending plan. Like, are you on track for your spending plan? And what categories should we make bigger or smaller? But really, I don't even care to get that much detail. Like, just talking about what are our financial goals and are we on track and are we focused on the right goals is really what I want for everybody.
Are there any like activity-based rituals or even spending type of rituals that you have found to be effective to do together to actually keep the relationship healthy on money matters?
Well, I think, again, one of the big ones, I think Brad Klontz is who I copied this from, but naming your savings account, having more than one savings account and really naming them your goals, but don't just call it, like I said earlier, like House 2022, but don't call it House 2022, call it Dream Home 2022. Like have the goal in some evocative term that makes you think of like how much joy you'll get when you reach that goal and the year that you want to reach that goal by in the title of the savings account. So it could be as simple as every Friday, the first Friday of every month, we just open up our goals, see where we are, think about how long it'll take us to reach those goals, think if which one we want to focus on most this month. That would be a huge win for every couple if they just did that.
Got it. Incidentally, the naming of accounts, because I haven't personally done that, so it's an interesting suggestion. I was curious, is the theory behind it just that it keeps reinforcing to you every time you open the account, kind of like the way that you described the anticipation of planning for a vacation, etc.?
Yeah, the anticipation for everything is better than the actual it. So have you ever heard of the hedonistic treadmill? Okay, so we have this level of happiness that we actually like to be in, or each of ours is different. And no matter how good something is, like winning the lottery, what we find is just a few months later, we go right back into that average. And so what's actually better than these huge wins is lots of little micro wins. And so opening up your account for Italy and saying, like, let's say wine country 2022, and seeing that go from 5 to 200 to 400, whatever it is, will give you more pleasure than actually going to Italy. Like anticipating that trip will give you more pleasure than actually going. And so, yeah, naming multiple accounts, and again, having the years that you're being pressed to, like, I have to reach this goal in that time, and having evocative, like emotionally driven terms rather than something simple are really the keys to that.
Got it. Cool. So my audience tends to skew toward people who are interested in the FIRE movement, which is an acronym that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. In some cases, that means saving and investing enough early on to retire extremely early, like maybe in your 40s or even 30s. For folks who have a serious goal to retire decades early, do you have any advice for how to get your spouse on board with the idea of early retirement and the financial choices and likely sacrifices that might be required to make that happen? Obviously, if you marry someone who happens to already want the same thing, it's probably going to be easier, but FIRE is like a niche community, I'd say, and a niche financial philosophy, and most people probably haven't even heard of it, let alone want to commit to pursuing it. So just curious if you have any advice for someone who has already decided that's what they want to do, that's their dream, and trying to convince their spouse to the same idea.
Yeah, I think the more you share with your partner how much, what life will look like for you after retirement, why you're working so hard, the more you're able to share that passion without any kind of strings attached, the more bought in they will. Then the clearer you can be for yourself why you care about it, the clearer you can be with your partner, and then your partner will be like, oh, I want you to reach that goal too. It matters so much to you. A little funny side note is that I teach an intro to financial planning course, and every year I send my students to the Fire Reddit page because they have the best tips on how to spend money intentionally, how to spend money in ways that actually make you happy. A lot of the Fire Reddit is actually purchase decisions and how saving up 3 months for that TV felt so good to not have to do any, credit with it or so on. And that idea of like, you can spend money as long as you have a plan, as long as you know where that money is going, as long as you're being mindful. I think I wish every American had, whether fire or not fire. So,
Got it. So you mentioned try to share that dream of yours in a no strings attached way.
mhm.
Well, first, what does that mean? No strings attached,
Yeah.
just for clarity. And then at some point, perhaps the strings need to attach. You need to get the
Yeah.
person on board.
Yeah.
And so I was curious, any advice for how to actually do that effectively without
Yes,
making the other person feel like they're sort of being dragged along, if that makes sense.
right. So hopefully, the more clear you are about what life will look like after retirement, the more they'll be bought in. It was so interesting when I did one of my early first sessions with financial planners, where me and the financial planner met with clients together. We had this client who every week was like, "I can't wait to retire so I can fish," and he would say that every week. And then one week he said, and I was like, how much do you get to fish now? And he's like, oh, I never go fishing. And I'm like, how are you planning 20 to 60 years of your life on activity you don't even do nowadays, right?
Mm.
And so I think a lot of us dream about retirement without saying what that retirement's actually going to look like. How long can you sit and look in the sunset? And so I think instead of having conversations, I can't wait to retire, is I can't wait to be free of this job that doesn't make me happy. And instead of being stressed, I'll be doing my passion, or I can't wait to just travel the world and see all these places. I think spinning it from getting away from retirement into what does this new life look like for you and your partner, and how will it benefit you and your partner, is what I was talking about with the no strings attached. It's not about changing behaviors, it's about getting their buy-in, and how will their life be better once you guys retire. I think that's the first. And I think once you get strings attached, it has to be how both people are making sacrifices and both people are getting what they want. So maybe looking at your line by line track spending and talking to them, and like, what of these purchases are you proud of that that brought you great joy, that are worth it? And which of these purchases were just because you were late, or you were rushing, or you weren't thinking about things when we bought? And how can we remove those purchases and keep the ones that you actually care about in our budget so that we can reach our goals?
Got it. Like Marie Kondo style.
Yeah. Really, if you have less, if you do less, but they all bring you joy, you'll be happier.
All right. Megan, this has been such a treat. That's all I got. Where can listeners find out more about you, your work, and what you're up to?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, but also visit our K-State page. If any of you guys are financial planners, I am so proud of the Financial Therapy Certificate at K-State, where we teach courses on money and relationships and how financial professionals can help couples talk about money. We teach courses on how to deal with resistant clients and how to just ask the best questions you can to your clients. So if anyone's interested in that, they can check out our K-State Financial Therapy page as well.
All right, awesome. We'll definitely link to that in the show notes. I'll probably reach out to you as well for some of the article links that you referenced, and we'll link to those as well. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me, and best of luck to you, and stay safe out there.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.